Hello and welcome back, everyone. In this video today, we will be actually learning how to code in P5.js, and we're going to start exploring how to draw some shapes and how to fill colors, and we're going to try to learn some syntax of how we can make it work. So let's begin. All right, so here we are with our glitch sketch. Okay, so the first thing that you guys will be doing is you will go to our P5 blank sketch and remix your project. I've already remixed the project that I'm using. So if you can see, this is the same blank sketch with the standard format that we have. And I've remixed and named it as basic drawing for the purpose of making some shapes today. And you can see that we have all the file structure here. I've opened this one here just for reference. It's easier for me to make it in the same, to open it in the same video, just because, when we start actually working here and start coding, we can actually see the changes happening in real time. It's, of course, a personal choice, but this is just like a more convenient way of working. You guys can decide how you like to work with it. Another thing is that if you like, and I think this is a good practice, is to actually go down here and open your console again. Here, make sure that this tab is actually selected so you can see the console. If you want to change the position of your console and not see it below in the dock, you can actually create it. So it can actually show you where your dock would be positioned. Because I'm using this space here to see the canvas, and I'm also writing the code here, which is why I'm preferring it here below, but there is no one way of going about it if you want to prefer this way. And oh my God, I have actually taken up a lot of space. I'm going to go back to here below. So if you keep it open, it's going to be just handy. It's just a good, practice. All right, so what are we going to start here is I'm going to start talking about a few of the things that are already we have kept as a template in our blank sketch. So these are the few things. If you notice here, there are few functions which are actually here, right? So there is setup, window resized, and draw. So setup function is what it does is basically, you can see these curly brackets. So basically what it is doing is, it is a block of code that can go within the setup function, which are defined by these curly brackets. So whatever I want to be performed within the setup function, I'm going to write inside these curly brackets all the way here. Okay, I'm going to keep it inside. The same goes for the rest of the functions as well. The setup function only runs once at the beginning. The resized function is basically gonna get activated once I resize this browser. And the draw function here is where we will write most of the code. Why? Because it keeps on happening continuously. So whatever changes that we are making, they're going to keep updating. So that we are going to put inside our draw function. If you look here, if I select this function, it's going to highlight all the function wherever it is written inside the code. If there were more resize option or maybe like window width, it's going to highlight wherever they are present in the code. So that is an easier also way for you to find things. All right, so this code has just been organized this way and we can start working with it. First of all, we are going to try with, okay, one more thing. So if you can see, there are different colors given within the code. And they're just highlighting certain different things that this P5 coding environment already understands. Remember, from our last sketch, there's already this library, which has been P5 library, which is being pulled. That means that there is a certain language within the P5 system that it understands. So that is what the different colors kind of will be talking about. But if you see these grayed out text and lines, what they are basically, they're all starting with these double / And what it means is this is not a line of code. This is just a comment for us to understand. So this is just basic English. If I remove these things, now it will start giving me error because P5 doesn't understand what it means. So this is just for our reference where, you know, if you forget things or while you're writing your code and you want to come back to it, it's a good way to like keep these things. Okay, what's happening next? What's happening back and forth. So, or if you're working collaboratively, that also helps between you and your partners to understand what one person did and what it meant. So that's that. So right now, also, if I want to comment out a line of code, which means that I don't want it to be executed, I can also comment it out. And commenting it out means that I'm going to put like / to it. So right now, this is taking up a background color. If I comment it out, it's going to go back to default white. I know the color difference. This color that I've picked is sort of an ecru color. So that's quite light for you to see the change, but that's what it is doing. And also you can see it being grayed out. So you can tell that it is not being executed at this point in time. All right, so I'm gonna move this one for now here in the setup function. What that means is it is going to create the background color only once and not going to happen repeatedly. All right, so let's start with some, and I'm going to talk about that in a bit, or maybe we can move it back and forth. That's perfectly fine. Let's start with a basic few shapes. Let's start by creating a point. So you know what a point is. Basically, what I'm saying is I'm using, a function called point. Each function is going to be, the name of the function is going to come with these parentheses. So this is a function that P5 already understands. Between these parentheses, we are going to give certain numbers, which are basically called parameters. What that means is we need to give some instructions to the computer to understand that, okay, I'm saying that I need to create a point, but it doesn't know where on the canvas it's going to create a point. So I need certain parameters. And by parameters, I mean, I'm going to give a location on this canvas for it to understand that, okay, give me or create a point here. That can be here on the left side, here, wherever. Okay, so right now we are going to start with something basic. So let's say I create a point here. So I don't know how much you can see, but this is a very, like, it's a single pixel. It's a single pixel of point that you can see. And the parameters it has taken is basically, and I'm going to talk about it in a bit, is the X and Y location on the canvas. What that means is, I'm going to put it here. I'm going to write that here as well. So it is taking up X and Y coordinate. So if you remember the coordinate system back from your math class in high school, when you move from left to right or from top to bottom, you know, your X coordinate is the horizontal axis and your Y coordinate is the vertical axis, right? That's the kind of similar thing that we're working with. However, there's a difference in how the computer understands from where your coordinate system starts. So what that means is that when we actually, the coordinate 0, 0 system is basically the top left corner of the canvas. So that is going to be this point here. If I move from this point to where it's right, it's going to be a plus or a positive value of X. The only difference is when you're actually trying to get a positive value in Y, that means that your coordinate system here, 0, 0, is going to be moving down, which is kind of a slightly bit reverse when we learned, because when we used to move down, it used to be a negative Y value. However, it's the opposite here. And it's okay, you'll get sort of used to working within system, but just remember, so what we are starting is from this point, top left corner, which is the 0, 0 point. If we move towards right on the horizontal axis, that's going to be an X value in positive. And if we move downwards on the vertical axis, it's going to be a Y value. So what I've just said is, okay, to create a point, start from this value 0, 0, move 100 pixels here. So that was our X value, the first value, and then also move 100 pixels down, come down here. So that is where it has created us, given us a point. All right, so that's just like one shape, or, you know, our starting point. Of course, there are so many shapes that we can draw. Like in our previous sketch, if you remember, we actually worked with, and see, I made a spelling error, and you can see that it has started giving me that too. So there is this called circle. Of course, I haven't put any parameters. Now it's asking me. And we can create circles, we can create rectangles, and so on and so forth. So let's just try and see. Or, okay, before that, let's say we can create lines. Okay, so we can keep talking. I've commented these out. So let's start with our line first. So if you remember, what exactly is a line, right? And before we do that, we now know that, okay, I'm asking here that, okay, now you need to create a line. Within these parentheses, I need to give certain parameters or arguments. So if you can see here in the console, it is also telling me that, oh, it's expecting 4 arguments, but it has received none. So it's giving me an error. Okay, what are those 4 arguments? Don't worry about it. If you don't know, there's always a way for you to check. But before I do that, what exactly is a line, right? Line is basically 2 sets of points, right? Where they're connected, that draws a line. So we basically need 2 points, right? So 2 points means that each point will have an X and a Y coordinate. So what it means is that I'll have an X1, Y1 that will define the first point's position, and then I will have an X2 and Y2, which will tell me the X and Y location of the second point. And once we have those 2 points, it's going to draw a line. All right, so let's try. I don't know, I'm randomly going. Okay, so let's go 200. And I can start again going down 100, and then just, well, I don't know, do the double of it. I don't know how it will. Okay, so here, so see, it moved actually 200 pixels here on X and came down here 100 pixels for Y. So now if you can see, they are the same position in terms of Y. But the second position is here, which was 400X and 200Y. So now it has given us a line here. Okay, so what I was saying was, in terms of another shape, let's try and do circle here. So what circle takes are 3 parameters. And what those 3 parameters are for the circle is, again, an X and Y position. That is where it's going to be located, and that is going to be the center of that circle. And then it needs to know the diameter of the circle. So it's going to take 3 arguments. So in our case, let's start at, I don't know, 300, 400, and 100. Too big, too small, a little too below. We can keep it overlapped or not. So let's just, yeah. Okay, so what it is doing is, now this is the X and Y location, and 100 is the diameter. Okay, now I'll also show you something else. So how do we even know what exactly are the parameters that each of this function requires, and how do we remember all of them? So don't worry about it. If you don't remember, we'll go back here to our P5 website. And there's something here called reference. It's going to be a super helpful tool for you, because by them, I mean the processing community and people working for this open source have created this whole repository of functions and things that we can use within P5. These are going to be super helpful, so you can always come back to them. So in our case, let's say we are working here in shapes, and if you can see that there are quite lots of shapes that we can work with. Circle and ellipses are sort of similar, except for that it can take 4 arguments, which means that what if we don't want to create a circle and we want to create an oval, right? So our width and height would be different. Line, we have already talked about. Point, rectangle. Okay, let's talk about rectangle here. So rectangle takes up 4 arguments. And you will see that here you can actually see a few examples of how the rectangles can be created. A good thing is that you can actually make changes here in and sort of run and see the changes happening in real time. There is also a description of what exactly this function or this thing that we are talking about does and how it does it. And then there is the syntax. If you see, we have this x with xy, which is the location coordinate, and then width. If we only give these 3 parameters, it's going to make it a square. If we give it a height, it's going to make it a rectangle. As simple as that. And of course, there are more parameters which are optional, the ones which are in square brackets. That means if you choose to give them, and whatever that means is written here. So if you want to, make it a bit curvy and whatever, that's totally up to you if you want to change the corners and radius and everything. Another thing, and that I'm going to go back here, is let's first do this, and then we can talk about this one here. So let's say 4 parameters, and now I'm overlapping everything on each other. Let's make it a bit longer. Okay. Okay, let's do this 300 to below. Or maybe let's just keep it to 100 for now. So, okay, one thing that you would have noticed is that when I was talking about the circle, it was the center point which was the X and Y location, and from where the diameter was actually created for the circle. The difference for the rectangle one is that if you notice that it is not literally starting from the center of the circle, it is starting from the top left corner from where this shape is going to be created instead of the center of the rectangle itself. So that thing is just by default. By default, circle or an ellipse will start or consider X and Y location as the center of that shape. Whereas if you're dealing with rectangle, the center, the X and Y is going to be not the center of the shape, but the top left point. But let's say this is by default. You don't have to literally follow this. What if I want that to be in the center, and now it's going to totally overlap. So here, if I actually change the rect mode, now I've literally overlapped this here. And oh my God, sorry. Was it 100? I'm just making changes. Or maybe I should just move this one here away from circle, because it keeps overlapping and you won't be able to see. Anyway, so if I change the rect mode, now the starting point is the center of this rect mode rather than the top left corner. Okay. So, and you can see the difference. If I change this and all the parameters for the rect are the same. So if I comment this out, you will see the shift in the position of this rectangle, because now the starting point, or this 100 and 300 X and Y position, is this point and not the center of the circle. But if I change it to the rect mode as center, this somewhere here is going to be the starting point, X and Y. All right, so that is one thing. And again, if you don't remember anything, or if you come across something new, you can always go back to this reference page and see all the description of what exactly is available here and how does that work, because that's going to help you in sort of, you know, creating something different and coming across and learning new things. Eventually we will be using these shapes quite a bit, so you will start remembering the parameters. But if you don't remember initially, don't worry, just keep going back to the reference page. All right, so we have our point, line, circle, rect mode here. Okay, one thing that I want you to remember, and this is something that we've come across before, is this spelling error, which is super, super important. Because if you make any spelling errors, if you make any spelling mistakes, it will take it as an error and will stop understanding what you're trying to get done, because those instructions will not be understood by your machine. The second thing is, if you know, one thing that you need to remember is that it is also case sensitive. And what I mean by case sensitive is, if you see the way I have written rect mode, if I change this M to a small m, now you can see that this says that it is not defined. So it is not only specific in terms of spelling mistakes, but it also is very specific about the convention of how they are named. So you have to be, and it's case sensitive, so you have to make sure of that. If, let's say, I don't say center in all caps, it will not understand again. It will give me error because it doesn't know what it means. So we have to make sure that we are doing these things correctly. Also, these semicolons are generally important in any sort of coding language. With JavaScript, they're not super sensitive about it. Like if you skip semicolon, which is basically like a full stop at the end of this sentence in a coding language, it won't give you a lot of errors, but I mean, your function will still sort of work, but some of the languages are very strict about it. So it's always a good habit to make sure that you put your semicolons at the end, just like you end your sentence with a period. All right, so these are some good things. And if you want to keep on adding comments, good practice, keep on doing that. All right, so now that we have gotten some shapes here, how about we try to learn a few more things? Okay, so how can we change colors of all these shapes? So one thing that we have noticed here in the background is that I've already given 3 arguments here. So these 3 arguments are basically, by default, it takes up the color values in RGB mode. So if you've worked in any sort of graphic design or any of those things, you will understand. So it stands for red, green, and blue values. There are different ways of how you can actually give color. So if I remove this, let's say, why am I commenting this out? Or maybe let's give these as example. Okay, let's do these here, maybe. Circle. For circle, I can literally fill this color with, let's say, red. That's another way of actually adding color to it. So, but if you notice one thing, this is an RGB, which means that I am giving 3 values to it, which can range from 0 to 255. And we'll talk about it, how this is sort of like a full range later on. But this is how it's working. So imagine if I wanted to not use red as a language, but if I wanted to fill these colors in RGB, what I can do is I can say 25500. So it's going to give me the same red color. Or if I remove this as 0 and I make it blue, So that's 0, 0, 255. So R and G values are 0 and blue is the full value. And also if you just give one color, let's say 120, it's going to be a grayscale value. So it's going to be some shade of gray. So 120 is this, 220 will be very, very close. So maybe let's do 200. It's going to be a different shade of gray, right? So it's all in a grayscale. Starting with 0 as black, okay? And 255, the maxed out value as white. And generally by default, they're filled with white. So that's one thing. Another thing important is the order of how we write the code. So if you notice one thing is that I have drawn the line here, and then later on I actually created the circle. So you can actually see the circle is overlapping the line because it is written below. So let's just try and move it here. Now you can actually see the line overlapping the circle. So the order is sort of important. How you want to create shapes and where and what you want to be superimposed on what. Another thing about fill function and okay, let's just, I don't know, for this one, let's just do red. But if you notice here, if I fill it out with red, this order is still going to follow because all the shapes that I have created below are going to be filled with that color. So if I need to create or fill with a different color, fill a shape with a different color, in this case a rect, maybe I can, I don't know what color that would be, some shade of blue, okay. And now my any other shape that I now create is going to be followed by this one. So you can, and we can optimize how we structure our shapes, but so far the basic one is that whatever comes next, they're going to keep following in terms of fill. The difference between background is that this is again filling the color, but it's filling the color of the entire canvas, which is the background. Fill is specific to shapes. Let's say if we wanted to change the shape of, change the color of the line. So in that case, we need to actually change the color here. Can you tell the difference in terms of green? Maybe I can put an orange, right? So this is basically going to, all the outlines, including the point, which is kind of right here, if you guys can see, are now orange. If you don't want, let's say any outline here, you can do no stroke. No stroke means that it is going to remove the outlines for whichever the shapes which are followed here. So that will work. Let's say we think that, okay, this is too thin for the point or even for the line, and I can add weight to this stroke line. And now you can see that this is super thick. All right, so that is, those are a few things. They're not the most amazing compositions, but sort of works. Am I missing anything? Oh, here, you know, just to show you about colors. So maybe we can go back here. You can see here there are stroke weight. Color is here. Okay, so here I'm going to background, and here you can actually see different sort of ways in which you can actually fill out the color. So by default, it is an RGB mode, but if you want to change to an HSB mode, which is basically hue, saturation, and brightness, you can actually change the mode and work with that. So, you know, just like rect mode, you're going to change the color mode first, and then you're going to make changes. You can also use this hexadecimal notation as well. If you, let's say, want to create or you want to pick a color that you don't know of, you can actually go to, well, color hexa, or there's also this color picker. And here you can actually, you know, just pick any color. You can see the RGB values and the HSB value or this hexadecimal value as well. So if you pick this up and you put it, okay, let's just change this one. Oh my God. So this is going to pick that color, whatever you've decided. So that is that, and that's resolved. I can always reformat it. And I think that is good for now. So if you guys have any questions for this week's exercise, you will be actually looking into an artist's work and try to replicate a painting, part of it or whole, by creating those shapes. That will give you a very good idea of understanding how the coordinate system works in terms of the position and creation and working and playing with colors and shapes. So let's get started and start, you know, just having some fun around and some practice.